let's get this thing cracking. Let's talk about your last fight first, although I'm sure that's probably like a somewhat of a sore subject. But just touch on it briefly. You fought Vladimir Matyushenko at UFC 129. I talked to you before that fight, and that was a fight you were excited about, facing another wrestler and seeing kind of how you stacked up against him. It didn't go your way. So what did you kind of learn from that experience, although it was a short-lived, I think 20 seconds or 25 seconds or something like that?
I think 27 seconds, but who's counting? You know, what I learned from it, you know, anything can happen in a fight. You got 4-ounce gloves on, anything can happen. So that's the one thing I learned from that. Other than that, I felt good going into it and everything. So, it's one of those things that, sucks that it happens, but it happens.
Right.
I try not to dwell on it, so.
Right, exactly. You can't really dwell on things like that. They just happen. Now, you're facing kind of a similar opponent in Vladimir, a guy that with the wrestling base, with big punching power, and just wondering what your thoughts are on this matchup with Ryan Bader this Saturday, and how are you feeling about it?
I feel real good about the matchup. I was real happy when Joseph, Mr. Silva called me and asked me to take this fight. I was like, you bet. Jumped all over it. The reality is, this is my third guy that's been, one time or another been ranked in top 10, easily up in the top 10.
Right.
So, I was pretty excited to take the fight. I think we match up well. He's a good wrestler. But on the ground, I think I have the edge on the ground. I have more experience than him. He has more credentials in the wrestling and stuff like that. But I mean, it's not a wrestling match. Fight. So, this is why I fight. Just so I can go out there and go against some other guys, different styles, and I'm pretty excited to go out there and fight a real good wrestler. Can see what happens.
All right. Okay. Awesome. Now, you mentioned the experience factor. You definitely have the experience over Ryan. Do you think that is gonna help you in this fight? And if so, just give me kind of some insight as to how the experience plays in.
I think as the fight goes on, it'll, the experience comes out. You always hear people going, "Well, I'm more experienced." Well, I just think I've been around the sport longer. I've been in a lot of different situations. I've been on the bottom before. I've been on top. I've stood up the whole fight. I've been on the ground the whole fight, per se. But so I just feel like I have more experience, more ring time. I think it'll come into play as the fight goes on.
All right. And Ryan's coming off 2 losses, similarly to you, although his losses are a little bit different than yours. He lost decisively both fights by submission. You, on the other hand, you had a real close matchup with Nogueira. A lot of people thought you won it. And then, the aforementioned Matyushenko fight we just talked about. But you said yourself that you think you're better on the ground, maybe not in the wrestling department, but it's maybe in like the submission grappling range and whatnot. Is that kind of a game plan going in? He's shown the weakness there with the submission game, having his only 2 losses come that way. Is that something that you're looking forward to maybe exploiting in this fight?
That's something I always look for. I love the submission game. But, if you look at his last 2 fights, he lost to John Jones, who hasn't. And then he lost to Tito. He got hit. He got hit, dropped, and Tito jumped on his neck. I mean, so I'm looking at the fights before that. His last 2 losses, are of little interest to me, just because those things happen during a fight. So, but like I said, I'm always going to be looking for the submission.
Okay.
If I could finish the fight with a submission, I'd finish it with a submission over a knockout.
Gotcha. Good to know. Taking into account that you have lost your last 2 fights, and this is probably a question you've answered more than once in the lead up to this fight, but is there extra pressure now having to go out and perform? I mean, you have 3 losses in the UFC, and I'm just going to point out real quick that 2 of those 3 were split decisions. They were very close fights. So on paper it may look worse than it actually is. I mean, do you feel that same way, or do you feel like this is kind of a do or die situation for you?
You know what? I try not to put too much thought into it. If anything, I could see him having more pressure than me with that, because this is his livelihood. This is his job and stuff.
Right.
This, not that I don't take this seriously or anything, but this isn't my job. This is my my full-time hobby, I guess. This is something that I enjoy doing. I love fighting for the UFC, and I've had a great time with them, and you're starting to see UFC. If you put on entertaining fights, if you go out there and you fight, they're going to keep you around. So I'm not trying to put this added pressure. Oh, I have to win this, or I have to. No, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to do my thing like I normally do. I'm not going to play it safe in this fight. I'm not going to go flailing my arms around, but I'm not going to. If I'm winning the first 2 rounds, I'm not taking the 3rd round off and just circling away from them. Now I'm gonna be looking for the finish. So, to answer your question, no, I don't feel any added pressure.
Okay, that's good. That's the right mentality.
That's the round. Yeah. That's the roundabout answer to that.
Perfect. So, as far as this fight goes, the promotion in the lead up to the fight was heavy, as far as if you consider the UFC on Fox show last weekend, and then the mentions of UFC 139 this weekend. What do you think about the sport and where it's going? As far as we just had the debut on network television. You guys are the follow-up cards. You're going to be on free TV on Spike. I mean, do you have any extra expectations for viewership, or what are your overall thoughts just on where the sport's going and the popularity of it?
Oh, you know what? I think the sport's it's blowing up, and you know what? I think you're going to be getting a lot of fights that either go the distance or that are really quick. I don't think you're going to get these fights that you get a submission in the 2nd round. I think if you go past the 1st round, most of the fights are going to end in either a decision, because these guys are getting so well-rounded. You're staying out of submissions, and most of them keeping their hands up real good, and they're away from punches and this and that. But I think the sport's blowing up. It's been a real busy month for the UFC. I mean, this is the 4th fight in 4 weeks. So.
Okay. Makes sense.
So, yeah,
and as far as... Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's just blowing up. I think with Fox now, that's just going to make it even. It's going to open up a whole nother viewership. It's going to be pretty cool, I think.
Right. What do you think about the main event on your card? It's a fight that has contender implications in your division. And you mentioned yourself that you've been fighting nothing but top 10 caliber opponents. So having a featured bout such as Dan Henderson for Shogun Rua, I mean, it's very feasible if you get past Bader that you could be in line to face the loser of that fight, or someone right up there in the mix with those guys. And just what are your thoughts on the division as a whole and in the main event?
Well, to face one of those guys, that would be pretty cool, I think. That'd be awesome. But for that fight, man, that's a tough fight. I give that a 50-50 to each guy. I have no idea who's going to win that fight. If I was a betting man, I wouldn't even touch that fight. you know, it all depends on what Shogun Hua shows up, you know. We've seen him, you know, usually after a surgery, you know, it's not the best Shogun. But his next fight after that is usually a pretty good fight. And Dan Henderson, you know, he'd never count that guy out, so.
Right.
But you know, I'd probably give the edge to maybe Henderson. I'm just going strictly because he's a wrestler. But I'm gonna stick with the wrestler on that. But that's about it.
Okay. And as far as your fight goes, you're fighting on Spike. What's that like to you? You're not on the pay-per-view card, but at least, you know, probably more people will actually tune in to watch Spike, you know, as far as numbers are concerned, ratings-wise. Are you happy with that slot? Are you happy with your position on the card?
Very much so. I love being on this spot. You know, in the UFC, you know, when I first got in, I had no idea what to expect, and you know, I won my first fight in my hometown. So I mean, I thought that was like, wow, that's pinnacle. You know, that's pretty cool. And then I got to fight, you know, Nogueira on the main card, and you know, that was real cool. Then I got to go on another main card, and now I get to go on Spike. So I've pretty much done everything, you know, on a broadcast thing. You know, I got to do the UFC primetime with I fought Little Nog. You know, they came in and videotaped it. You know, for me, you know, that I'm just, you know, a regular guy. You know, nothing special. You know, but for me to, you know, be able to, you know, experience that, and you know, for my friends to, you know, get to watch me on TV and stuff like that, I think that's unbelievably cool.
Perfect. All right, Jason. And just a few more questions here, and I'll let you go. Let's just touch on your training camp. If you wouldn't mind, let's talk about that as far as, you know, where you spent it, how it went, and you know, if you feel like you're well prepared for this fight.
I do. You know what? You know, I always tell myself, I can look in the mirror, I can look at myself and say, hey, you know what? I did everything I could to get ready for this fight. And, you know, I can look in the mirror and say that. I've done everything. You know, I had a great strength and conditioning. You know, my camp was perfect. You know, I stayed in Omaha for the most part. Ryan Jensen and Jake Ellenberger was there. You know, I had some great wrestlers, Zach Stalder, Joe Ellenberger, and then some outstanding jiu-jitsu players, John Hansen, who just got third in the world, Scott Morton, and then my stand-up, you know, with Ryan Jensen and Kurt Pedoni. You know, I feel great, you know. I had some awesome training partners. Anthony Smith was one of them, fighting on Strike Force Friday. I even went up, you know, this is the first time I've been fighting almost 12 years now. This is the first time I got 3 days off. Got to go to Denver. Got to train with Brendan Schaub and Elliot Marshall right before Elliot fought Brandon Vera. You know, so
awesome.
That was real cool. Just you know, I've never went anywhere else and trained, you know, for an extended period of time. You know, I've been at other gyms, you know, for like one class or something, but I got to spend 3 days there and, you know, pick up some new things and roll some different guys. So that was real cool. So, you know what? My training camp was just great. It was great.
Perfect. That sounds real positive, Jason. So you feel that this camp, obviously, you know, you're prepared, but do you feel that maybe this camp with training with the guys, I guess I'm assuming at Grudge, or is that where you went in Denver?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Did it help you evolve as a mixed martial arts fighter? And will fans be able to expect like a new and improved Jason Brilz this Saturday?
Yes. I mean, it's always a new and improved Brilz when I get out there. You know. Sorry for referring to myself in the third person, but you know, yeah. You know, and I always try to pick up, you know, new things, and hopefully I'll implement them in this fight.
Awesome. Perfect. All right, Jason. Well, I think that's pretty much what I have for you. So I appreciate your time. Is there anything I missed maybe that you want to say? I can get out there for you.
You know what? I just if I could thank my gym, Premier Combat Center, CrossFit Omaha, and a couple of my sponsors, Polani Watches, and actually I'm going with Punishment Fightwear and stuff this time. So I was pretty excited for that too.
Awesome.
So thanks to those guys.